Welcome to another artist conversation in our series, Pathways for Dialogue, Past, Present, Future.
I'm so excited to introduce everybody today. Okay, so we have Florine. Florine Démosthène was born in the United States and raised between Port-au-Prince, Haiti, and New York. Démosthène earned her Bachelor of Fine Arts from Parsons School of Design in New York and her Master of Fine Arts from Hunter College University of New York. She has exhibited extensively through group and solo exhibitions in the USA, Caribbean, UK, Europe, and Africa, with recent solo shows including In the Realm of Love at Mariam Ibrahim Gallery, Paris, a solo booth exhibition with Mariam Ibrahim Gallery at the New York Armory Fair, and The Stories I Tell Myself with Gallery 1957, Accra, Ghana. She is the recipient of the Wachtmeister Award, Tulsa Artist Fellowship, Arts Moves Africa Grant, and a Joan Mitchell Foundation Grant. She has participated in residencies in the USA, Caribbean, UK, Slovakia, Ghana, and Tanzania. Her work can be seen at the National Museum for African American History and Culture, Africa First Collection, University of South Africa, Lowell Museum of Art, Hessler Museum of Art, the PFF Collection of Art and American Art, and at various private collections worldwide. Lavett Ballard is a BIPOC female artist, art historian, and curator and author. She holds a dual bachelor's in studio art and art history and a minor in museum studies from Rutgers University and a MFA in studio art from the University of Arts in Philadelphia. Ballard's art has been commissioned twice as the cover for Time magazine. The first time for a special 100th anniversary of Women's Suffrage edition released in March 2020. A second in February 2023 for a cover and internal art feature inspired by the writing of Pulitzer Prize winning author Isabel Wilkerson's book titled Caste, Origins of Our Discontent. Among her accolades is a Yaddo Fellowship Artist Residency in 2021, a Pew Foundation Residency nomination in 2018, and in the same year, she was named by Black Art in America as one of the top 10 female emerging artists to collect. Ballard's artwork has been used in films and literary production, in addition to being acquired by private and public institutional collections, nationally and internationally. Some of the collections include the Arthur Roxanne Gay, actor Hill Harper, Grant and Timea Hill Collection, the Petrucci Family Foundation Collection, Barnes Foundation Museum, African American Museum of Philadelphia, the Colored Girls Museum, the U.S. Art and Embassies, Syracuse University Community Folk Arts Center, the Jewel Collins Smith Fine Art Museum, at Auburn University Collections, among many others. Ballard views her art as a reimagined visual narrative of people of African descent. Her use of imagery reflects social issues affecting primarily Black women's stories within a historical context. Her current body of work uses collage photos adorned with paint, oil, pastels, and metallic foils. These photos are deconstructed and layered on reclaimed large and small aged wood fences. The use of fences is a symbolic reference to how fences keep people in and out, just as racial and gendered identities can do the same socially. This fusion of wood and photography offers artwork that both explores her Southern roots, yet visually speaks volumes to continuing themes within her community. Lavett Ballard is currently co-represented by both Long Sharp Art Gallery in Indianapolis and Gallery Matisse in Baltimore. Okay, thank you two for being here. Yeah. So you two, yeah, thanks. So I just want to jump right into it. You two have had an insane past few weeks. I just want you to talk a little bit about what you've been up to, the shows, and what you're working on right now.
Me? I've been part of the Silver Art Studio program in Lower Manhattan. So essentially, I get a studio space for an entire year. I've been working on some small independent projects, but the major project I've been working on is a solo museum show at SCAD Museum that opens up in August. So it's been hectic trying to get lots of work done.
Yeah, I've been working on the Philadelphia International Airport art installation. Then I recently just opened a solo exhibit in Winston-Salem, North Carolina at the Delta Art Center. And I'm currently working on, I also have a work over at Madeira project for Nikata, and Francis and McGuire Museum I currently had an opening with, and that's with St. Joseph's University. And I'm right now working on my solo with UNC Chapel, not Chapel Hill, UNC Charlotte, which is opening the end of July, beginning of August. So, yeah, I've been a little busy.
Yeah, just a little bit. Can you talk a little bit more about the show at Governor's Island?
The show on Governor's Island, I was approached by the curator to include some, to offer some pieces that I may have that would talk about the idea of motherhood in the Black community. And it was fairly easy for me because most of my work is about feminine identity, specifically mothers, children, what I like to consider strong women. And I offered them a total of 3 pieces. I believe they chose 2. And they're currently on display. I haven't even seen it myself in person yet. So, because for the last 2 weeks, I've been traveling between Winston-Salem, New Jersey, Philadelphia, Baltimore, New York, back to Jersey, back to Philadelphia. So, yeah, so from what I've seen of video and images, it's an incredible show, and the location is really beautiful. It lends to my work because with me working in mixed media, I'm all about texture and just the walls, and it's just a beautiful space.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I want to talk more about location, like speaking of, yeah, because you both like have been all over like recently, but also like, for example, Florine, you're born in New York, but went to Haiti and have been just like going back and forth. And in conversation with you, Lavett, you told me that you're a Northeasterner with a Southern soul. So I'm just thinking about like how where you grew up and where you've been influences your work.
Yeah, so I was born in the US, but my parents sent me to Haiti was the thing to do then. And then I came back. So, I mean, I'm a diehard New Yorker. The majority of my life has been the United States. And I would say a little more than about 15 years ago, I decided to say to hell with it and travel for a year. And in that process, I found myself in West Africa. I went to Ghana, not knowing anyone, loved it. I was supposed to be there for like a month or 2. I ended up spending a year there. And then I came back and then moved back there. So for quite a while, I've been living between Ghana and South Africa. And then I came back to the US to do a fellowship in Oklahoma. For me, location, you know, I pretty much erect my bubble world. So a lot of my inspiration comes from interactions that I have with people, talking about things that are not like comfortable to talk about. So I think like my first year in Ghana, I asked everyone I met what they thought love was. And I got like so many interesting responses because I don't think most people ever thought about that in sort of the African context and how we view love and what love means to us, or even if it existed. So I started building the work around that, but I never really talked about it until last year when I had the solo show in Paris, you know, the city of love. So I really wanted to bring this sort of African perspective about what love is. So these are the kind of things that feed my work. It might take me a real long time to get to that topic, but I'm always trying to see how I could sort of make it more and more simpler, getting to the core of what I want to say and allowing the work to say that for me.
Yeah, I'm a Jersey girl, so I like to call myself a Jersey-born but Philly-loved artist, because that's really where I found my biggest connections within my love of the arts. But as I was going through grad school, I realized I kept getting this comment from visiting critics and from my faculty that my work is very Southern. And it made a lot of sense to me because when I was a child, my grandmother, who would take care of me while my parents were working, and I was the eldest grandchild, so I had her to myself for 4 years. And she would take me to our family farm in Lynchburg, Virginia every summer. So the end of the summer, for going into Labor Day weekend, we would be there for almost a week cleaning this big old log cabin house. And when we say a log cabin house, we mean a log cabin house. We're talking, you never know what might come out the cabinets, out of the wood burning stove, you had water inside. We had our own running water, but no indoor toilet. So I was using an outhouse up until I was 14. And I think what really connected me and the epiphany I had while I was in grad school, why I love wood so much, why I like history, why I want to highlight women of color and their stories, is because I spent a week every summer from the time I was 6 all the way until I was a teenager, spending there listening to my grandmother, my great-grandmother, her sisters, her cousins, all the stories of the family, in between cleaning these old photos that hung like salon style, hanging from these log cabin beams and with shoestrings and ribbons and whatever they could find. And they would point out, oh, you missed this one. You know, that's your great-great-great-grandfather, and he did this or she did that. And that connection of history really, I think, sat with me for so long. So yeah, I grew up in the city. Yeah, I went to school in the city, but even to this day, people sometimes have a hard time picking up my accent, which I don't think I have, but apparently I do. Some people say, sometimes I can hear a little bit of Jersey, but then I hear some Southern twang. And I was like, I don't know, but I think I picked it up and it's just there. But it really is something I love to do, is travel, which I'm blown away by your, I wish I was able to travel as much as I used to. But now I'm getting back to that, even though it's very tiring, so.
In all of your travels, have either of you been surprised at how people have encountered your work?
I've always had like really positive response to the work. I think in terms of how I work, it's, unless you meet me, you don't know it's being done by a Black woman. You just really don't know until you see me. So I think a lot, like at the beginning, I wasn't super visible, and I made it was purposeful because I wanted to sort of get the feedback from the work. But when I did this solo show in Ghana, I was a little nervous about it because I didn't know how people would react to it, because it's not something that's sort of part of the Ghanaian canon of how work is done. And it's a boys club, and I'll keep saying, because it's true, it's a boys club. So being a foreigner and then being women, you know, installing this work, but the feedback was just overwhelming. Like, everyone really understood the sort of implied narrative that I was trying to convey in the work. So for me, like, I've pretty much had really good response from the work, but every once in a while there's someone who's like, oh, this is too, what's the word that they would use? They used to say it was like too much about like things decaying, the earlier works when it was all on one sheet of Mylar. But once I dropped the background and it really just became about the figure and sort of put everything inside the figure, then it became something else. It became something otherworldly. So it really opened up how people interpret the work.
Can we talk more about the figure and why you two use figures in your work? Like, why black figuration?
That's when I was little and I first encountered art, I would see females in the work, and I think I was more upset. I don't know if that's the right, it just didn't feel right with my soul that most females that I was seeing in art were not created by females. And especially when it came to the black body. So I just felt that it was kind of my job, literally, to show black bodies in a way that only a black female would be able to. There's certain, when I'm coming up with my compositions, a lot of the images of the people I'm using are people that we don't know who they are. They were kind of ghost images within files of photographs. So when I'm doing that, I want to give those people a narrative, give them a background, give them a story that otherwise would go on to nothing for them. The responsibility, I feel, to show black women is very strong because I come from a very matriarchal family. And, you know, you have 4 aunts and a whole line of women telling you, don't take no mess, this is what you gotta do, you gotta stand up for us. You kind of inherit that. So when I'm creating the work, I always have that kind of little angel over my shoulder telling me, oh, you gotta give this person a better story, or you gotta expand on their narrative. So, yeah.
For me, it became, I was available for the poses, bottom line. That's what it came about. But I wanted to be able to do something for a long period of time. So I needed a figure who was going to be available anytime and I could pose anyway. And that's how I began to use myself. It wasn't easy at first. It was very difficult. And as it progressed, and you know, the narrative became more and more layered, it was more about, you know, this particular concept that I had in my mind. The other thing is, most of the work that I created, I didn't do it in this country. So I was living, you know, between Ghana and South Africa. So in Ghana, majority, like, race is not an issue. So this was no longer, to me, like, I didn't have to be a black artist. I was just an artist or a foreigner. And my engagement with women was completely different. So here, I think women are more, there's like, I don't know how to describe it, but there's like a real heavy energy that black women carry for a variety of reasons, and it's all legitimate. And when I went there, I found myself like not having to be that person anymore, but actually being able to step into womanhood in a very different way. And just seeing women just being regal, like all the time. And the standard of womanhood is just completely different. So for me, it was like the first time I could really delve in and use my body, use my form, and explore these ideas. So when I came back to the US, that was one of the first things that I've totally forgot about. I was like, oh no, I'm gonna be a Black artist, I'm gonna be a feminist artist, be a New York, and I'm like, but this work has nothing to do with this, so how am I going to talk about this work that has like nothing necessarily to do with this, but everyone's gonna want me to have something to say about this. And for me, like, all of it comes down to a base of, like, in essence, some idea of spirituality, some idea of knowing oneself. And that's what the work has been mostly about. Me using these experiences that I've been having and trying to figure it out and explain it on this two-dimensional plane. But I don't want to step into these politics because they're so loaded. And for good reason, you know? When I was in grad school, I was all in the politics. All in the battles, all in your face, like, you don't know, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, no, let's look at this a completely different way. And now I feel like it's so much more effective, and I have a much sort of deeper level of conversations with people. It's not to say that the politics are not there, but they're not in the forefront of the work.
Yeah, I think at some point in both of your journeys, you've kind of arrived at that. Can you talk more about that? Like this idea of knowing oneself amid like all the voices you hear?
So, it's hard. I get very, I wouldn't say I have ADD, but a lot of times when I'm working in my space, I'm letting the image tell me what it wants me to do. I have a huge lexicon of images to go through. And a lot of times when I'm creating an image, first I let the wood tell me what it wants. Am I gonna do birchwood? Am I gonna do wood slice? Am I gonna do fencing? Am I gonna do paper? And then from there, what is the theme? Am I going to talk about women resistance? Am I going to talk about something from a more historical context? Am I going to talk about motherhood? Am I going to just talk about love or childhood or play? And from there, I let the work build from there. But a lot of times in that process, while I'm working and coming up with composition, sometimes some images just don't want you to see them. They want to be like peeled away, like by layer by layer. So I know the one complaint I have had from, I wouldn't say it was a complaint, but the one critique I've had is from some people, it's kind of, it seems to some people to be messy. But I look at it as a beautiful messy. It's like when you're walking down the street in the city and you look at those circulars all over the wall and you're having to peel back every layer to find the original circular that was there and find out what story was being told there. I'm doing the same thing. So I'm adding more layers sometimes because that image wants you to find their story among all the layers. And then some images, they just want to be out there and just be very clairvoyant on what's going on. But yeah, it's just, you know, artist process. It's one of those things, it's like, sometimes you get in there and you say, I'm gonna work. And you spend half the day listening to an Audible book or a podcast. So it's, you know, sometimes the work says, no, you ain't really in it today, or I'm not ready for you right now, and has to be stepped away, and then you come back, so, yeah.
Florine, since you use yourself as a subject of your work, what's your process like? Is it similar or different?
No, I would never get work done. I'm like super disciplined, so, because I know what happens. You go in there, streets to Audible, you make a few phone calls, and it's like 10 o'clock at night, and I'm doing this, like, what happened? So my process is basically, I sort of come up with the theme, but the theme has been ongoing. So I've sort of take a section of the theme. And then I might write for a while. So I try to write frequently and I extract some of the ideas from that. And then I'll do a photo shoot and do all of these digital collages and then work off of digital collages for the paper collage. So, you know, the bulk of time is really spent in that process of writing, researching a bit, and working these you know, things out in Photoshop. But then once I get to the studio, you know, I paint the sheets of paper and then I cut. It's like work mode. So I know like I can like complete this piece in 3 days, 2 days, or whatever time I know I can do it. I used to try the process of sort of like letting it happen in a way. And then nothing happened. Like I would pick like, you know, the eyes not perfect, the lips. I found myself in this realm of perfection. And you know, as an artist, you look at all of these artworks and at times it's in like, all of these images is in your mind and you're comparing yourself in a way, even though you don't ever want to admit it, but like you're comparing yourself. So it's like, oh my God, if this eye doesn't look at the person the right way, blah, blah, blah. And it creates, for me, it created a lot of tension. And it made the studio process feel like work and not enjoyment in a way. So when I came up with this system, it was like all of that craziness can happen on Photoshop. So if I don't like it, shut the computer, walk away, come back, you know, delete this, you know, eraser tool is my friend, make it giant and erase this part and do that, do smaller prints. But once I get into the studio, I know what's going to happen. And then the change happens, the magic happens. And I'm like, you know what, you just need the eyes. You don't need all of the facial, you know, features. You need every toe and every nail done. So these are like the decisions that I make in the studio. And I find it like freeing. So the studio becomes really a lot of fun and enjoyment. You'll find me smiling.
Oh, yeah.
When you get there. Yeah, you don't find me throwing things like I used to.
It's like the best thing ever. To you open that door to the studio, and it's like, only relation I can get to that feeling is that first time you were a kid and you walked into Toys R Us. It's like you open and it's like, I get to play. I just get to walk and just say, I want this, I want this, I want this, and I might get something from it. So it's the feeling that you get from going into your creative space and is so good.
When it's working.
When it's working. When it's working. Because when it's not working, it can get very ugly.
Yeah, so that's what I do. Like, that's why I work so much on the laptop, because I can take it with me anywhere. But when the studio, it's like my zone, it's my little haven, it's my comfort space. So, and like, even just recently, I actually put something where I can take a nap. Normally, I don't have anything. It's like the chair, the tables, it's work.
Oh no.
You know, a big speaker.
If I could fit the bed in my studio. I mean, my studio right now, a couple people here have been in my studio, so it's like serious comfort zone right now, but I don't get a chance to enjoy it because when I go in, the first thing I'm doing is, okay, what project I have, this project I started, this project I started, this project's pretty much done, this I need to start because I can't finish this one if I don't do this. So, and I'm the only one there, unlike many of my peers who can have like a studio assistant or someone else. I have 6-foot-something sons, so they help me with the heavy lifting and the cleaning of the fences and the big pieces. But most of my time in the studio is sitting there cutting. Like, I am an X-Acto knife queen.
We need to get together.
Oh, we need to get a sponsorship from X-Acto and how
many, like, I have like 15 scissors.
At least. And I have my favorite X-Acto knives.
Yes.
And I sit there and I can literally cut out probably about 15 photos in easily about 20 minutes. Easily, without a problem. And it's very relaxing. It's kind of like when you're doing your hair or you're watching a good, it's just very relaxing.
When it's working.
When it's working. The hardest part for me is coming up with the composition.
That's why I go on the laptop.
Yeah, I can't.
I'm telling you, that was the hardest part for
That's
me.
the hardest part.
Tons of sketches, never being happy. And then once I did the photo shoot, I was like, oh, I can just like, if I need a hand to do this, instead of me sitting for hours trying to get the perfect hand, well, guess what? It flips and I can stretch it. I can do these things. And it was like,
I wish.
we are done.
I'm literally running from one section of the studio to the other. Oh, I need lips, or I need a hand, or this flowers. I need a flower that's in pink that's not too flowery. I need something more. And so I'm going from one space to another to the different flat files. Because I do so much cutting, a lot of times they're already cut, so I can just pull them out. But the hardest piece I think I've ever been challenged the most with was the second time cover. I think that was like hell.
What happened?
Hell. It's with the first time cover, it was very simple. They told you you're doing Rosa Parks and the bus boycotters. They gave you all the images from Getty, which was great. You already knew what you were working with. And you knew the theme, and you already had the wood already. And then the second one comes, and it's literally in the midst of you working on 2 solos and an installation, and you have less time. The first one I had 2.5 weeks. This one I had 10 days. And like they say, be careful what you wish for. First one I was like, oh, I wish I could have added this picture and that picture. This one, they said, just do what you want. No! You gave me the pictures the first time. Because I'm like you, most of my time is spent research, finding the right images to tell the right story. And if someone says, just do what you want, and if you've ever read Isabel Wilkerson's book, Caste, Origins of My Discontent, that is a lot of trauma, both racially, it's just so much. And you have to put it only on this, the piece was 36 by, I believe, 34 inch wide, and you have to fit it just right. So it just got to the point where I was putting so much stuff in and then taking it out and putting it in. I've never felt so frustrated as an artist in my life. And I don't think it was because of the timeline. I think it was because I had too much freedom. And with having that much freedom to tell somebody else's story is very difficult. You know, so that was, oof, won't do that again. I need more time.
You were also telling me though, like despite all the work that you have to do, you can't imagine having an assistant.
Yeah.
Can you explain?
You gotta teach them.
Yeah.
Well, I work on fences, y'all. So the fences are really large. And I source them from a fence company. So when you're replacing your old fence, they literally take it down and they put it out front, and it's free to the public. And they call me when the pile gets too high, and my husband goes out there with them with the chainsaw, and I'll say, honey, I want the one that's a third from the bottom of the pile. And he'll lift everything up and he'll pull it out. And then I said, but I don't want that in. Can you just chain it, like saw it right here, right down the middle? And then I have to lug it up to the studio. And at that point, my boys come in. They're 19 and 16, and they'll come in and they'll spray it down, and then they'll start sanding it. And then I have to let it dry for at least a month. before I can even get to work on it. And then I have to do the process all over again. So that part is where I get help. But cutting the images, I don't know if I would feel comfortable letting someone else do that part, because I don't know what part of the image I may use and not use. I don't know if I'm going to use certain parts of the positive or negative of the space. So giving someone else that freedom to choose, I'm not up for. Doing the actual adhesion process, I'm keeping that to my grave. So yeah, so that part, no. I could probably use help for the other stuff, the administration stuff that we have to deal with when you get to a certain point, you know, travel arrangements, that type of stuff. But actual working on the art, I don't have like piecemeal, you know? So it's really hard. And I like it. Like I said, I like sitting there cutting and listening to a podcast, or sitting with the work and saying, okay, the theme I wanted and the pictures I chose, I need to change the scale. How am I going to do that? I like that part of the process. And then the prettying part, which is the painting part, that is very organic. So that's really the end part, and that goes very quickly for me. So yeah, no, I ain't getting no assistant.
I don't have one either. I'm a one-woman team. Yeah, I mean, I do everything, but I'm a good administrator, so that's the plus. So all the applying, all of those apps things, but I think it's time that I need an assistant, but it's hard for me to figure out what is there for them to do. But recently I realized probably the bulk of the issue is the packing and shipping. So while I'm doing the studio program, I'm up in the suburbs with my parents, and my dad is shipping and receiving, and it's like perfect. I was like, can I hire you? So he's like, perfect. He has the right size car.
Keeping it in the family.
Yeah, keeping it in the family. So like something like that.
My husband does it all.
Yeah, the shipping and receiving is a big thing. I gave up the photography, because I used to even do the photography. So now I hire photographers. It's just time saving, but like my website, social media, all the apps, I mean, I do that myself. So I just know how to plan my time well. Yeah.
Yeah, I have someone. I try to do as much of it as I can. That part, I would love to hire someone. Like, and I even tried, like I said, I have a 16-year-old, 19-year-old. And my 16-year-old, mind you, has more followers on TikTok than I do, and I don't understand it. But I asked him, I'll pay you a little money if you just do. He's like, no, Ma, that means I'd have to follow you around and take pictures. Yeah, I'm good. So it's the administrative part I like, but I don't. And then there's also the hunger. And what I consider the hunger is that time, usually for me, it's on a Monday or a Thursday, where I'm just reading Art in America, seeing what's going on out there, keeping up with the trades, following up with curators, following up with gallerists, trying to find that next opportunity to show my work. That part of it is harder for me than anything else, because you're really putting yourself out there. Yeah, your art is out there, but sometimes you'll call people and they'll be like, you would have met them at an art fair or a function, and they'd be like, Lavett, who? And then sometimes you get, oh my God, I've been waiting for you to call. Well, why didn't you call me first? Why am I having to, you know? So it's just, it's a lot of work.
Yeah. Well, while we have you two here, I wanted to see if we had any questions from anyone before we wrap up.
Florine, this question is for you. Lavett, you spoke about a work that you were really challenged by for the second time cover. And Florine, I'm curious if there's any piece in particular or a series of works that caused you some agony while you were producing it. And could you speak on why?
It would definitely be the Accra show. So there, probably the first time I didn't travel with materials. So they're like, we're gonna order all the materials. But I brought just basic things with me because I'd come to New York for like 4 months, and then I went back to finish the show before I went to do the fellowship. And it was utter chaos. Everything arrived late or in partials. Then they, I was like, let's just do panels. Let's do panels. And they're like, fine, they made me panels. All the panels were bent. All the panels were like too heavy because they're like, yeah, I know what a panel, and I like showed the picture, I did the measurements, everything. They screwed that up. So panels had to be made a second time. Then like, because I used Mylar, so I ordered a big roll of Mylar. The sheets never arrived. So now I have to like fill the gallery with 1 roll of Mylar. This is gonna be chaos. So it was just one thing after another. And because I use like a type of archival glue, which I knew they sold there because I lived there, there was no glue. I was like, I never forget, it was December. I was like, the hell you mean there's no glue? And you have to understand, when you go, it's not like here where they say there's no glue. They'll say, there's no glue, you should, go order online. Or they'll even give you a reason, the shipment has to come. Be like, Madame, there's no glue. Glue is finished. I'm like, how is glue finished? So, because I lived there, I was like, okay, I'm gonna go to the market. So I called my taxi driver who I've been using for years. He's like my personal chauffeur. We go to the markets, we hit up everything. They're like, there's no glue, glue is finished, glue is scarce. I was like, how the hell is glue scarce? Like, how is this possible? So then I called my friend in Benin. I was like, listen, you have to go find glue. She's like, what do you mean I have to go find glue? I said, listen, go find glue. So she's, 2 countries over trying to find glue. And I remember my friend, Tarek, who was in London, is like, Florine, if you need anything, he's Ghanaian Lebanese, ask me and I'll bring it for you. So here am I having to call Tarek. I said, I need glue. He didn't even ask the question. He says, how much glue? I said, whatever can fit in your luggage. He's like, no problem. So he comes with like a gallon of glue. And come to find out, it was like people were making slime. So everybody was, there was no, like, I was down to carpenters. I said, give me some glue. And the guy who was making the board is like, I can't give you my glue. Glue is scarce. So we went to that. I'm running out of Mylar. And for whatever crazy reason, before I left, because I had these little vials of glitter that I had gotten in Ghana when I was there. And on the way going to this show, I was like, let me just buy some more glitter. Maybe I can do something interesting with it. So I went and just bought sacks and sacks of glitter, shoved it in my suitcase. And I was like, you are insane. You're buying all this glitter. No glue. Running out of Mylar, I was like, we're gonna glitter this. And I had an assistant. He looked at me, I was like, don't ask questions. We just need to install this show. And I'll never forget, that night, we covered head to toe in glitter. We come back the next day, and I was like, shit, we should have done this from the beginning. It was beautiful. And I was like, we should have done this, right from the jump. There was a pest infestation in the studio. Yeah, it was the most craziest thing. I remember doing the artist talk, and I was like, you're surprised, there's no glue in the country. And I was like, I have the glue, come, I will sell the glue. Yeah, it was crazy things. Like, that was the most extreme, like literally the day of the show, I was still working.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah, exactly. They were just installing like this craziness, but I lived there. So I prepared myself. Then we had the framers. I didn't trust the framers because I saw how they framed. And I was like, you all got to come to my studio. And, it's a whole thing. And, like, she's controlling. I was like, you're damn right I'm controlling. You're going to frame it properly. And I had to do, like, 3 days of framing with them. In the end, the whole team came to the show. They were so happy. Like, everybody was happy. And I was just like, I'm done. I can't do this anymore. Going back to New York, whatever happens, happens. I can't do this. But it was an experience of me learning just how to sort of roll with it. With whatever happened, just roll with it. The show came out beautiful. Yeah. Roll with it.
A lot of times, roll with it.
Yeah. Especially when, like, this is the first year where I am not insane. Like, I'm only insane for one thing, and then I'm done. I was like, I needed a break. I've told so many people no. for this reason, because I know how last minute things take, and you know, my work is mostly framed. So I'm always thinking 2 months before the show to give a month for framing. But yeah, Ghana set me over the edge.
Thank you so much, both of you, for sharing your trials and tribulations. I'm glad you both were able to make it here today. Thank you, Linda and Claudia. Thank you for everyone for coming. That's all the time we have, unfortunately.
Let me just say, producer's privilege. This was terrific. Such, I think you'll agree with me, such a privilege to have these insights and stories from you. It's almost like, well, I hate to say seminar because that sounds too academic, right? And not probably that interesting. But, you know, really this in-depth look and feeling of what your process is, trials and tribulations, as Yvonne said. But, you know, it's great, right? Am I right? Yes. Big hand for this wonderful panel. Thank you.